Now we have our add to head method all set up, so let's see what it actually does. The first thing that we need to do is create a linked list, so we will say variable ll equals a new linked list. So now ll is our linked list, and this is the one that we will be working on for the rest of this video. Now here's the part where we use the add to head method to add our first node. We will say ll dot add to head, and we will pass in some data that we want our head node to have. Let's pass in 100. Great. We just added one node to our linked list. Let's see what we did by logging it out to the console. Okay, great. So this is our linked list, and you can see that it has a head pointer or head property that is pointing at the node we just created. And you can see that the tail pointer is also pointing at that same node that we just created. This is exactly what we expected because this is the first node that we added to our list. So right now it is both the head node and the tail node because it's the only node in the list. Let's add another node and see what happens. We will say ll dot add to head, and let's pass in a value of 200 this time. And let's log it out to the console to see what we have now. Okay, cool. So now we have our new head node that we just added, and it has a value of 200 right here. And we can see that its next pointer is now referencing the first node that we passed in with a value of 100. Good, that is exactly what we expect. You can also see that the first node we added with a value of 100 is now our tail node, and the tail node's previous property references the second node that we added with a value of 200, which is now the head node. Perfect. So you might have noticed these two circular values here, and all that really means is that these two nodes are starting to reference each other back and forth, or in a circular manner. Now, that might not be very intuitive at first, but if you really think about it, it starts to make some sense. All this circular value means is that this head node's next property is referencing the node in front of it, which is this node right here. And this node's previous property is referencing the node behind it, which is naturally the head node. And that head node's next property is referencing the node in front of it, and so on. And you can see how this now becomes circular if you start going back and forth between two nodes like this. But that is totally fine, and that is what we expect from our linked list. That's just how linked lists are set up. Great, so let's add one more node to the head of this linked list. We will say ll dot add to head and pass in a value of 300 this time. We're now going to copy everything that we just did and paste it in the Google Chrome console to see what we created more clearly. And we will type out ll. Okay, cool. So this is the linked list that we just created. Let's start at the head. The head should have a value of 300 because that is the last node that we added. And it does. Good. Its next property should be the second node that we added with a value of 200. And it is. Good. And finally, the next and last node should be of value 100 because we added that node first. And it is. Great. And this node's next property is null because it is the tail node. Okay, good. So it looks like our add to head method is working properly. Now, we can of course do the same thing starting from the tail node and going backward to the head node. We can see that the tail node has a value of 100. Its previous node has a value of 200. And its previous node, which is the head, has a value of 300. This node has a previous value of null, which makes sense because it is the head node. Great, so our add to head method works just as it should. We can now move on to our add to tail method, which will be very similar to the add to head method, just the reverse. See you in the next video.